Ayer me dormí a la 1 de la mañana viendo House of the Dragon, que estoy obsesionada. Y para que vean por qué mi marido dice que yo trabajo 24/7, me quedé pensando, ¿cómo se hicieron estos idiomas? ¿Cómo son estas lenguas? ¿Quién inventó esto? Y en ese momento empieza un trabajo de investigación y vamos a dar con David Peterson. Y David Peterson, que tenemos hoy invitado en el programa, es lingüista y creador de los idiomas de Game of Thrones, de House of the Dragon, de Dune, de The Witcher. De hecho, tiene un libro que se llama The Art of Language Invention, From Horse Lords to Dark Elves to Sandworms, The Words Behind World Building y Living Language, Dothraki, a Conversational Language. Y bueno, pues encontramos a David por cielo, mar y tierra, y David está el día de hoy. Did you hear in my voice how excited I am to have you on the show?
Of course, it's very nice. And it's wonderful to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, you have no idea, because I've been obsessed with the House of the Dragon. My husband says I'm working nonstop. So what I was saying in Spanish is I'm watching the series and I'm thinking, who invented the language?
Oh yeah, and I understood that. I mean, I'm not terrible with Spanish. I'm just not as good as I should be.
Okay, but you do speak Spanish. Did you understand what I said?
Yeah, of course.
Ah, pues muy bien. So, a ver, how many languages do you speak, David?
Oh, not that many, you'd think. I mean, the reason with Spanish is because my family is from Mexico.
What?
Yeah, I grew up with Spanish for a little bit. You know, the reason that I don't speak Spanish today is actually because I had a stepfather and he moved us away from the family when I was very young. And so when I came back, I wasn't as fluent, you know, as I had been as, you know, as a little kid. I couldn't keep up. So I had to just kind of piece it back together as an adult, you know. And these words and names look like.
So how do you define the sound system of a language?
There are a couple of things. One of them is the actual sounds that are in it. In other words, it's like whether this language is going to have P, T, and K or not, that type of thing. But the other is how the sounds are put together.
I mean, give me examples. Give me examples.
Yes. You know, Hawaiian, right? Aloha means hello, love, right? And it sounds like a Hawaiian word. But you can take those same sounds and produce something that doesn't sound like Hawaiian. For example, aohla. Aohla, right? It's the same sounds, but you hear that. And even though we don't speak Hawaiian, you know, that's not a Hawaiian word. That doesn't sound like a Hawaiian word. And it's because it's how the sounds are put together. We call this phonotactics. So I guess phonotacticos. And this is which sounds can come where. And it's actually the phonotactics that are more important. In other words, what sounds are put where. That tells you whether you're hearing something that is in a language or not, that could be in a language or not. For example, like really easy. If you like the sounds in Starbucks, right? They're in Spanish, but you know, if you just say Starbucks, that's not Spanish, right? You can't put the sounds together like that. You need to say a Starbucks, right? Like that. That has to do with the phonotactics.
Okay, híjole. O sea, I'm trying to follow you with all my heart, with all my heart.
It's like which sounds can occur next to which sounds, which ones can be at the beginning, which ones can be at the end.
It sounds like something very easy, but there's a lot of logic and study behind what you do. Because, like, if I wanted to invent a language right
phonotactics, so I guess phonotacticos. And this is which sounds can come where. And it's actually the phonotactics that are more important. In other words, what sounds are put where. That tells you whether you're hearing something that is in a language or not, that could be in a language or not. For example, like, really easy. If you like the sounds in Starbucks, right? They're in Spanish, but you know, if you just say Starbucks, that's not Spanish, right? You can't put the sounds together like that. You need to say a Starbucks, right? Like that. That has to do with the phonotactics.
Okay, híjole. O sea, I'm trying to follow you with all my heart, with all my heart.
It's like which sounds can occur next to which sounds, which ones can be at the beginning, which ones can be at the end.
It sounds like something very easy, but there's a lot of logic and study behind what you do. Because,
Yes.
like, if I wanted to invent a language right now and start speaking, o sea, anybody can say that doesn't exist. But when you hear High Valyrian and Dothraki, it sounds like something logical.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and this is precisely why you have to have somebody there to create the system behind it, so that everything that's said in the language sounds like it's from the language. Because obviously somebody who watches the show, they're going to hear it and not understand it because they don't speak the language. But it doesn't matter if you can understand it or not. You can hear something and tell whether it's a language or not just by hearing it.
Is that the reason why we can identify it? Because there's a consistent pattern throughout every word of how it sounds.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like, this was why I don't know if you're familiar with this series, Star Trek Discovery.
Of course.
The first season, everybody heard the Klingon and felt like it wasn't real Klingon, that it didn't sound like what they had heard before. And the reason was actually because it was the first time they actually had somebody who knew what they were doing telling them how to pronounce it.
Exactly.
But it's like, it didn't feel the same because, like, it didn't sound like what they'd heard before. Even if they didn't speak Klingon, they knew it didn't sound the same.
Exacto. Les quiero poner, David, un pedacito de cómo se oye High Valyrian, ¿ok? Para todos los fans de Game of Thrones, esto les debe de sonar muy familiar. And what does that mean? Do you even know what that means?
Yeah.
You do?
That's yeah, of course. That was so the first thing that she says is which is a dragon is not a slave. And then she says, I am from the old blood of Valyria. And Valyrian is my mother tongue. I think I missed one in there, but I remember that a little bit, yeah.
So you can't speak High Valyrian. Isn't that a great pickup line? To walk up to a woman at a bar and start speaking in Dothraki? You must be very successful with women, David. Barar Bordolis. David Peterson. Morgulis. So this is actually an exam for you, okay? Oh my.
So that was Dothraki. And what's interesting there is Emilia Clarke, the actress, right?
Yeah.
Her character, Daenerys, she's supposed to speak Valyrian fluently, but Dothraki not. Like, it's not supposed to sound
so perfect.
Native. And in fact, that is it. And so it's like, when I hear that, it's like, oh, it sounds Dothraki, but not pronounced very good. But that's accurate. That's what she was supposed to be doing, right? Her Valyrian sounds perfect. Her Dothraki sounds non-native. And she did it very well.
Oh, so her Dothraki sounds like your Spanish? Is that what you're saying?
And in fact, that is it. And so it's like, when I hear that, it's like, oh, it sounds Dothraki, but not pronounced very good. But that's accurate. That's what she was supposed to be doing, right? Her Valyrian sounds perfect. Her Dothraki sounds non-native. And she did it very well.
Oh, so her Dothraki sounds like your Spanish? Is that what you're saying? So you're actually on the set telling the actors, okay, you're not getting Dracarys right.
Oh, no.
No? And who does that?
I was on the set of Game of Thrones once, but that was during the last season. And there had been a leak the previous season. Somebody had leaked an episode. And so they didn't allow us to take pictures. So, like, there's no photos of me on this.
Oh, my God. But then who tells Emilia Clarke or whomever, you're not saying it right?
Well,
after
I
you
record
write the
every-
language?
I think is I record everything on MP3. So they hear it ahead of time and then they rehearse. But then on the day of, honestly, only the actors know if they're making a mistake. But the thing is, like, especially with, in a TV show, they'll do a scene like 10 times. And the actor may know that they did it right 8 times and they messed up 2. But later, the editor doesn't know. The editor just takes the one they like.
Exactly. But then I imagine you sitting in your TV room looking at the series and saying, oh my God, what did she just say? That is not the right word to do it. And pulling your hairs out of your head.
Yeah, it's something I've had to get used to. But I will tell you that most of the time, it's pretty good. There are times where it's excellent, which is wonderful. And then every so often it's very, very bad. But you know what? Most of the time it's good.
Okay, so you're probably going to say it's a mistake. But what we think is that when you work on Dune or Game of Thrones or House of Dragon, there is inspiration from other languages. Like I'm thinking maybe he was listening to the Vikings or Slavic or Greek or ancient Latin. So how do you come up with these languages?
So in the case, the phonetic inspiration has to come from somewhere, of course. But in the case of both High Valyrian and Dothraki, that inspiration came from the books. It was, how can I match this sound that I see in the books? And so I didn't have to bother thinking about other languages in the world. It was just, how can I make a language so that all of the words that are supposed to be from High Valyrian, all the words that are supposed to be from Dothraki, sound like they came from this language,
Yeah, I know, but I mean, you're reading the book. I mean, nobody is pronouncing that word for you. So you're making up in your mind what you think it sounds like.
Sure.
Like, so give me an example with one word out of the book.
Okay, well, Dothraki, for example, there's something spelled Khal. K-H-A-L.
Kal.
But what about the H?
Kahal.
That's a possibility.
Kahal. That's an option.
That is an option.
Okay, let me give you option B.
I thought the most likely option, what he intended, was khal.
Without the ka. Not kal.
Como jota, porque
Claro.
KH in English, if you're trying to make that th sound, you probably write it KH, because he's George R. Martin, he's an English speaker, right?
Yeah.
And so he writes Khal, I'm thinking khal.
And so you take that word, and from that word, you start making up the logic and the pattern of how the rest of the words are going to sound?
That's right. And it's like, that's one word, but then there's many others. And
okay.
So you find all the vowels.
Shoot.
And you see different combinations. So, for example, there's mranha. That meant inside me. M-R-A-N-H. Mranha. And so that tells you something. It means like, I need others. And
okay.
So you find all the vowels.
Shoot.
And you see different combinations. So, for example, there's mranha. That meant inside me. M-R-A-N-H. Mranha. And so that tells you something. It means like, I guess a word can begin with M-R. Like that. And so you just kind of build on. And then when you start creating new words, you use the pieces that you've created. And so, for example, the word for language, it's the same as the word for tongue in Dothraki. And it's L-E-K-H. Lech. And it's a type of thing, if you look around at the words in there, it's like, yeah, that's a plausible word. That makes sense. It fits the Phonotactica. It fits the patterns.
Yeah.
And so there you go.
Oh, so I really hope everybody understood what you said, because I am not going to translate this. Pero el punto es que lo que queremos que entiendan con esta conversación de David es que no está inspirado en ninguna lengua. No es de, a ver, voy a agarrar un pedazo del alemán con cómo suena en finlandés, un poquito de español y tantito náhuatl. No, no es así. No es así. Ya entendieron cómo construye, entendiendo cómo se juntan las vocales, las consonantes y dónde vas a poner el sonido.
For example, the R, in Dothraki, you say r at the beginning or end of a word, but in the middle of the word, it's just ara. So that's why it's, Dothraki, with just a little tap, kind of like in Spanish. In Valyrian, r everywhere. Everywhere. Zaldrizes, Uzdarrik, Zozdaur, So
it's Russian. It's Russian, David. It's Russian. How many words do you have to develop? Or is it an alphabet? And is there these languages in the written form?
You, of course, have to have a way to write it for the actors because they have to be able to see it. In the fictional world, there's no way to write Dothraki. In High Valyrian, that was an entirely other project. Maybe start with that, and we can talk about the Valyrian writing system.
So there is a Valyrian writing system. I have it right here, and I see these icons, and so it's not actually a letter. It is is it a syllable or a concept?
It is closer to Egyptian.
Okay. Jeroglíficos is what we say in Spanish.
Sí. It's closer to that because each symbol could stand for an entire word or a small piece of a word, sometimes a sound. Some of these glyphs, they stood for entire words, but some of them just stood for sounds, and you used them together. And so it was a very, very complex system. That was what I wanted for High Valyrian, something like that.
So there's a whole alphabet of High Valyrian. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, there's about 500 glyphs at this point. Yeah.
And you are you still working on that?
I sure am. Yeah.
Oh my! Well, you know what? When you finish, you should sell that, like on Duolingo or something, and you would become. It's there? No, ¿cómo? Oigan esto. En Duolingo, más de 1.2 millones de personas están aprendiendo High Valyrian y Dothraki en esta app que enseña idiomas. Oh my God. Aren't you so flattered?
I created that, so there's a lot of work.
Okay, so tell me you're making money off of this to make me happy.
Ahora no.
Ahora no, pero eventually sí.
Well, it's like, I have to say, building that course for Duolingo, that was a labor of love. I did it because I thought it would be fun, and I thought people would enjoy it. And they did. And so
okay, honey. Well, you got a few more years to start milking this cow.
Yes, we did Dune. Unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly what our next project is. There's a movie. It's going to be a reboot. I can't say more than that my wife, Jessie, and I created a new language for. It's going to be a big one. We're pretty excited about that. We're also working on another movie. It's kind of like, it's a brand new adaptation of a book. Very exciting, very strange. And we're in the process of working on that. All these things, they're probably coming out next year, I think. So yeah, that's what we have on the horizons. Couple new movies, and I'm fingers crossed for another Dune movie, but haven't heard anything yet.
Sana tohmari yeran. How did that sound?
San Akto Mariyeran.
San Akto Mariyeran. O sea, le acabo de decir gracias. What a long word for thank you. It's like asking for ice cream in Finland. It's like 50. It's like 55 consonants and like 25 vowels. Just ice cream.
Haluaisin jäätelöä. That's how you say it in Finnish.
How?
Haluaisin jäätelöä.
Haluaisin jäätelöä. David, ¿cómo digo en Valyrian, quiero un dragón. ¿Cómo digo eso?
That is, you'd say, Zaldrizi Jailan.
Saldrizi Jailan. Jailan, is Jailan dragon?
No, that's I want.
And what is Saldrizi? Dragon?
Zaldrizi is dragon when it's the object.
Saldrizi Island. Alguien, por favor, Saldrizi Island. Un beso, David. Thank you.
Y rimbose.
Y rimbose. Bye bye.